I made my homemade pizza. It was awesome, and it more than fit into my nutrition for the day. Tracking helped a lot, right? Because I was able to see, okay, this is kind of where I was. It was a little bit higher in fat, maybe than other foods that I might have, just because of the cheese and the pepperoni and stuff like that. And
that's probably where the calories come from.
I could choose chicken, right? I could make a barbecue chicken pizza. I could, you can do all kinds of stuff. And so I feel like that was kind of one of the more exciting things for me too, because I made this pizza. I had to stop myself from eating the whole thing because I could have.
Sure.
But, I was like, you know what? I'm done. That was awesome. I'll save those pieces for later. Have some carrots. We'll move on.
Yeah.
And I ended up feeling it was great. I was full. With pizza, I feel like you just eat it so fast that you don't realize you're full, because then I waited for 5 minutes and was like, actually, you know what? I'm good. I'm totally fine.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really fun because, like, I had this super fun thing that I made. It was awesome, tasted great, and welcome to the Well-ish podcast, sponsored by Iowa Specialty Hospital, where real life meets better health. We're your hosts. I'm Derek.
I'm Anthony. Let's dive in.
Welcome back once again to the Well-ish podcast. I'm Derek.
I'm Anthony.
We're your hosts. Super excited to be back with you again here. We loved the first part of this episode we're recording today. So if you haven't listened yet to part 1 of our Dietary Guidelines for Americans episode, that came out a couple of weeks ago. Check it out. It was super fun for us. It's fun to get to sit here and just talk through kind of applying some of the science that we think about and talk about to real life, right? And that's what these are for. That's what these guidelines are for, is to help kind of the person who hasn't gone through all the schooling that we've gone through have a little bit of sense of maybe what they can do to help their health and work on their nutrition. And so getting to work on part 2 today here, which we're just going to pick up where we left off.
Yeah.
Very, very excited. It's got some sections in here that I am amped about. I think we both are, right?
Yeah.
Because I think we both feel super strongly about some of the things coming up. So before we jump all the way back in, any thoughts, reflections on part 1 of our 2-part series here?
I think maybe at the end I can round it out a little bit.
Sure.
Most of them are going to be kind of just like some general themes that I wanted to touch on a little bit more during part 1.
Okay.
But I mean, I thought part 1 was fantastic. Obviously, you and I really enjoyed this this topic and these topics. And to your point about us having a little bit more education about this, I often think when people, I feel like we use this phrase a little bit too loosely nowadays, is that, I did some research and this is what I found out. We clearly did do our research. We went back to school and did that and learned how to also go through all this and then it's our expertise and I just love it.
Yeah,
so I'm pumped for this.
Well, it sounds like stay tuned for Anthony's themes at the end.
Yeah. Let's see if I even remember them. I'll probably get to a point where
Here, I'm going to write it down. Themes. Now we won't forget.
There we go.
Okay, perfect. So I guess let's just kind of pick up where we left off. That's really getting started with healthy fats.
Yeah.
So why don't you jump in?
No. We did healthy fats.
We did healthy fats.
Yeah. So,
okay. Pause.
Do you have anything else to add to that? No, it's fine.
Okay.
So we finished on healthy fats, and I did those fairly slow topics where I was like, I repeat, right? So
were those Anthony's themes part 1?
Yeah, and honestly, before we're gonna dive in right here, one of the things from our previous episode was that it really stuck with me, and I kept thinking through more and more, was just the confusion, I would say. Again, we used that word quite a bit in the previous episode about the healthy fats part, because it still does clearly state in here trying to have less than 10% or 10% or less of your calories from saturated fat, right?
Yeah.
But yet it kind of contradicts itself especially when you look at just the upside down pyramid and what's at the top of that, right?
Yeah.
So I think that can kind of be like a brief recap of what we talked about.
Yeah.
And then we move on to the next section is focus on whole grains. And I think I'm going to let you lead this one off.
Yeah, absolutely. And so whole grains. I think these have become at least in my world, right? And maybe I'm missing what. And again, we're dietitians, right? This is what we think about. So I'm sure people aren't driving their cars thinking, "Oh man, whole grains. How do I feel about those?" Right? But I do, and so I think that whole grains, they are a carbohydrate. They are a carbohydrate-based food, right? And I think once we throw that word in there, carbohydrate, people get very nervous because of the last 10, 15 years, 20 years or so of basically bad press that has been circulating about carbohydrates, right? And so I think the thing that has been forgotten is that carbohydrates do provide fuel for your body. And when we're thinking about health in a holistic model, right, that means you're exercising. That means you're getting great sleep. You are drinking plenty of water. You're exercising your brain a few times a day, right? If maybe your job's challenging and that's where you get your brain exercise from a mental perspective. Maybe we're doing lots of puzzles, reading books, things like that. Exercise your brain a little bit. Challenge yourself in that way. Carbohydrates fuel all of that, right? Yeah. And so whole grains are the optimal way to form a base of carbohydrate in your diet, right? And we can get into maybe where some of those more refined grains might come in handy, right? Especially when it comes to exercise and things like that, right? But when we're building that nutrition base, whole grains are what should form that. And so prioritize fiber-rich whole grains. That's the first bullet point. That doesn't give a ton of parameters to it, but I think the word prioritize is important here, right? And so we want to make sure when we do have a grain that it is a whole grain, fiber-rich. So that could be oats, that could be whole wheat, brown rice, quinoa, all these different things that contain fiber, right? Because that is going to help your body most effectively process those carbohydrates. And I say it that way because if we take in a simple carbohydrate, say a piece of candy, right? That's the simplest I can think, other than table sugar, right? If you just eat a spoonful of table sugar. A Skittle, there we go, sure. Your body's going to metabolize that really fast. That's how that works. It takes it in, absorbs it, and boom, just like that, however much energy that was, it's used or stored. It's gone, right? Fiber helps slow that process down a little bit. And so if we can take in a whole grain that has fiber with it, those carbohydrates, they don't hit us so fast, right? We get to eat them, and they building a base of nutrition. It's building a base of energy, right? And so it's like if you know that you have a big day coming up where you got lots of things going on, that you're going to use your body, use your brain, a breakfast that's rich in whole grains, that has lots of fiber in it, that has also those good carbohydrates, that's going to provide energy steadily throughout the day because it slows down how fast your body absorbs those carbs, is what that fiber does. And so while, again, that first bullet point doesn't give us a whole lot, it does say prioritize, which I do like that. Yeah. Anything that you have on that first bullet?
Nothing in the first bullet. I just want to double click on the term you used, 'cause I thought that was really interesting. And you said carb-based or carbohydrate-based foods, right? And I think that the reason I want to double click on that is just because when we think of whole grains, oftentimes we just think it is a carbohydrate, purely carbohydrate, right? It would be just like that Skittle that I mentioned, or that jelly bean, right? Yeah. But when we think of whole grains, it also has a few other, different types of macronutrients to it, right? It doesn't just have carbohydrate; it also has protein. Sometimes, it may at a low amount, but still it would have a little bit of protein. And many whole grains don't have too much fat in them, not naturally, but nonetheless, some of them might have. Right? Exactly. So, but it's just a well-rounded. Like we reduce these concepts too much sometimes, and I just really wanted to point that out. Is that yes, whole grains are a carbohydrate-based food option, but it's just not a pure carbohydrate. And you did a wonderful job at explaining what that is. Yeah, especially with the fiber. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so anyway, I think that's super important. Prioritize those fiber-rich whole grains. Yeah. Yep. Next line in there, though, does mention significantly reduce the consumption of highly processed, refined carbohydrates, such as white bread, ready to eat, or packaged breakfast options, flour tortillas, and crackers.
What do you tell? So I think this is an interesting one to me,
Okay.
Because one of the things that, as a dietitian and someone who meets with patients, and we talk about strategies to build, like I mentioned, kind of build that healthy base of nutrition. One of the things that I try and emphasize is, what are we going to put in, not what are we going to take out, right? And so while I feel like the significantly reduce the consumption of highly processed refined carbohydrates is great, I agree. Like, to me, it's that first bullet point that like has to get woven in with the second, because if you're just simply reducing your carbohydrate intake because all you were having was white bread and white flour tortillas and things like that, well, now you're missing nutrition, right? And so I feel like that's something that, and also just taking things out is hard.
Yeah.
That's tough.
And in general, whenever we take things out, like most people are going to swap it with something, and what are we swapping it for, right?
Yeah.
Something that actually, now I'm just going to throw in some themes here and there. We often hear that, especially with the previous guidelines, that industry or companies were, or the government even was giving us these guidelines to make us more sick, right? That's kind of a common topic.
Sure.
The reason I bring that up, though, is because when we have guidelines that come out, usually industry follows. And what I mean by that is, when we have something come out and says that we need to focus on or prioritize whole grains, because this is also something that has been in previous guidelines, the marketing teams of these industries are going to find a way to leverage that, right? It's not that they are using whole foods, because that's something we all agree on, whole foods that have whole grains, right? It's that they are finding a way to add an ingredient or add something that allows them to use the term whole grain on their packaging. So therefore we choose it more, because that's also what we're hearing from these dietary guidelines. And I really wanted to bring that up last time, and I forgot to, so I wanted to throw that in here now. And we can talk more about this later on, but I think that is something that everyone needs to kind of just think through a little bit. It's not that anyone's trying to make us more sick. It really isn't. I think this can help. These guidelines as a whole can help our standard American diet. However, obviously we there's some things that we think could be either explained better or maybe more in depth on, or whatever the case is. So does that point make sense?
It does. It does.
Okay.
Now I'm curious.
Okay.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
So I don't want you to call out any kind of product.
No, sure.
Obviously.
Pretty good about that.
How does someone go about not getting caught in that trap of, it's just on the label because they put this thing in there, and yes, technically that is a whole grain, but they put in that much of it and still kept their product cheap?
Yeah, I'm going to try and answer this as succinctly as I can. I think the big thing that you said there was trap. Trap's super important, because it is in some sort of a way a trap. It's a good way for them to get us to think that we are making a good choice, right? Now, to really answer your question, how do you determine whether or not it truly is whole grain or not? Honestly, the easiest way, and it takes some practice, is looking at the ingredients label. Actually, what I'd add before that is, how close is it to its whole food, right? And then second, if it is a package, like the ingredient label, and if it is truly a whole grain option, I'm thinking of bread, for instance, is a good example. When you flip it over, if the first ingredient is not whole wheat or whole grain, I actually prefer whole wheat, then it's probably going to have like a refined carbohydrate or some sort of other flour. And the ingredients label is made by quantity of weight. So if you have a full loaf of bread, the number one ingredient is going to be what's most
abundant.
That product is mostly made of, right? And then it goes lower and lower and lower. That's why you usually see at the very end those, if there's vitamins are added in. If there's some preservatives, they're added in, because it's a really small amount that they use for that. But the main ingredients are going to be located at the top, because that's the majority that it uses. So that's how I would say the easiest.
Perfect. I agree. So
it's as simple as I can make that.
Read your labels, people.
Yeah, read your labels.
If you don't know what you're doing there, send us a message. We'll help you out.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, that's,
all right, last thing they mentioned are servings.
Yes.
And whole grain servings goals are 2 to 4 per day, adjusting as needed on an individual caloric requirements. And I'm probably not going to, double down on that, because I've mentioned that a lot in the previous episode, but it's just pretty vague. What is a
It is.
serving?
It is. It's tough. I think that we can, like, I don't know, we can get kind of a general idea on what a serving size is. Somewhere, I would say, so I want to give some numbers to people because I think that's helpful, and I'm going to pull from diabetes because that's a really, like, there's a lot of numbers out there for what a serving size of carbohydrate is as we talk about someone who might have diabetes, right? And so those numbers can translate a little bit, but I would say anywhere between probably 15 grams of carbohydrate and 25 grams of carbohydrate constitutes what I would consider to be a serving.
Sure.
Right? And so if you're, now again, super important based on individual caloric requirements. If you are 6'8" and an athlete, right? Like, okay, your serving size might be bigger, right? Yeah. Your serving size might be 45 to 60 carbohydrates per sitting, maybe even a little more.
Yeah.
Right? Or if you're just like a super active individual, that could change, right? And so I think that last line, again, like you said, super kind of vague, difficult.
Yeah.
But 2 to 4 servings per day, I think it's really important to remember that as we build a base of nutrition, it's that per day part that really I want to highlight. It's not like at one sitting. It's not in one meal, right? We want to build a base of nutrition throughout your whole day, right? Because if we start trying to fit all of it into one meal, what that will accidentally probably lead to is eating another serving or more at the next meal, and all of a sudden we've had 5 or 6 servings of whole grains in the day. And so just be aware of, like, all right, did I have one for breakfast, lunch, dinner? Where am I at? I kind of just keep that in mind as you're starting to think about implementing this 2 to 4 servings per day. Like, spread it out a little bit. Give yourself, because carbohydrates lead to energy. So if you need energy, use them. Use them earlier in the day. Get yourself some energy, and build your nutrition base using those whole grains.
Yeah. It's a little side tangent. Actually,
Jump in. What do you got?
No, because you mentioned if you're gonna do it earlier in the day, and I just think of Andrew Huberman because he's obviously a popular name out there, and he talks a lot about getting high fat, high protein early on in the day, and then carbohydrates later on in the day for focus and things of that extent. And I think both are right. I think it does really matter. When are you primarily doing either your exercise, your work, the things that matter most, and most of us are first thing in the day.
And also, everyone's different.
Yeah, that is true.
Everyone is different.
Yeah.
I think that it's so important to take nutrition research with a little bit of a grain of salt, right? Because there's a lot of it that will apply to you, but some of it won't, right? And that's why you work with us. That's why you work with a dietitian, because we've read through a lot of those. We have strategies that have worked for different people, so we're able to work through that stuff together. That's the point, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not. I promise it's not, right? And I could get into lots of examples about how I know that's not the case. And I know it. And so, like, listen to what we say. Listen to what people like Andrew Huberman might say.
Yeah.
Take it all, right? And then find the thing that makes you feel really good, right? You should feel good now. You should feel good later. You should enjoy your food, and it should make you feel like you have lots of energy and able to do the things you want to do. That's what it should be. Yeah. Now and later.
Yeah. Going to the earlier point that I made about research, like, you have to kind of act like a scientist in a way for your own self, right? And tinker with it. Like, exactly to your point, I totally agree. It's not always going to be, it's never one size fits all. Science is never 100% correct on anything.
It's true.
And you just need to kind of go in with an open mind, willing to try something that sounds accurate, that's not going to harm your health, and then figure out the best strategy for you moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Next heading here: limit highly processed foods, added sugars, and refined carbohydrates. So we've kind of already briefly mentioned. This has already been briefly hit in the previous section on the whole grain section.
Yeah.
So what they're talking about here, kind of reading from the first bullet point. So we're thinking about foods that are packaged, prepared, ready to eat, or other foods that are salty or sweet, such as chips, cookies, candy, things that have the added sugars and added sodium. Now, this is something that I want to pause right here. So I think with the sodium thing, right, for, we'll call someone a healthy individual who, isn't being asked by their doctor to reduce or limit sodium intake, right? It's okay to have salt, right? It's okay. And so you don't have to limit that to 0, right? We don't want to go overboard. You don't want to be just find a nice happy medium. If you're eating things that have 1,200 milligrams of salt in them every single day, that might be a little much, right? But there's no reason you can't have salt in your seasoning. There's no reason you can't, especially if you're cooking whole foods, right? Like a chicken breast doesn't have sodium in it. And so if you want to add some go for it.
Sure.
Right? And so it's just about kind of finding that nice middle ground there. Moderation.
Yeah. Always, compared to what, instead of what, for what, whatever those cases are. And I do think I'm just going to add a little asterisk there. When there's a lot of electrolyte supplements going around right now, I think it's a really popular thing in the world that I've seen. And there's a lot of buzz around it. And I just maybe urge people to be generally careful. Because yes, I do think electrolytes, depending on the individual and the state of their activity, their health, it is a good product to use. However, we just don't want to be overdoing it either. Like you can definitely have salt. I think there's a lot of concerns about whether or not that 2,300 milligram dose is really like the level you should be aiming for or going below. Just don't overdo it. Yeah. Like you said, moderation.
Moderation. If you're someone who goes out and exercises, sweats a lot, you probably need a little bit more to get back in your body.
Sure.
Right? I mean, I think it's important to remember we live in the real world, right? It's not a lab. So if you're eating a bunch of highly processed foods that have a bunch of added sodium to it, be careful.
Yep.
Right? And if you're eating only whole foods, add a little bit of seasoning. Like that's just keep it in moderation. Okay. When dining out, choose nutrient-dense options. That's how that first bullet ends, right? That's a hard one.
What does that mean, Derek?
That means we want to be choosing foods that we might actually make for ourselves at home when we go out to eat, right? So that means fruits and vegetables. That means whole grains. It means lean meats when we can find them, right? And let's use our classic cheeseburger and fries for our example, going out to eat, right?
Okay.
Oh, you're looking at me. You could jump in.
No, I just feel like you're just egging me on here.
Go for
Cheeseburger and fries. Your fries are going to be made in beef tallow. Is that what we're getting to here? You're just trying to rile me up, aren't you?
Well,
no, that's why I'm smiling. No, finish your thought.
No, I'm just
I'll get in.
If we think about that, right? Like let's break it down. Your average fast food burger is going to be made with like 73% ground beef, right?
Like
so it's a ton of saturated fat. And so for let's compare 93% ground beef to 73% ground beef, right? There is more protein per ounce in 93% ground beef than there is 73, right? Same weight, more protein on over here. It's also got a lot of that saturated fat that we talked about. We want to be careful of having too much of that, less than 10% or less of your daily calories coming from saturated fat, which I want to get back to here at the end of our discussion today. And then usually using a refined carb or refined white flour bun if we're making a burger, right? Processed American cheese is probably what's going on there. Now, some places do, a slice of cheddar, which I don't mind that at all, right?
Yeah.
But so you can see all the processing that's gone into just the burger, right? And if you're going out and I'm like trying to get a meal, I would say get 2 burgers, right? I would prefer that over getting the burger and the fries, right? Because those fries, they've been peeled. They've taken all the fiber off of the potato, right? And so all you're getting, and a potato, I love potatoes, and they can be really good for you as long as we continue to incorporate that fiber as often as possible from that potato. And a lot of that comes from the skin. And so we peel that skin off, and all of a sudden those fries are just simple carbohydrate hit. And have you ever noticed that you can eat a large fry without much challenge, right? It's because your body doesn't know how to say no. And so that's kind of where I was going with that. It's really, really hard to go out and choose those nutrient dense foods at a lot of restaurants that we have, this fast food or fast casual dining kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't have a whole lot actually to add to that. I think I'm really not trying to make this as controversial as possible. Yeah, when you go out to eat, maybe just try and limit how often you go out to eat. If it is a challenge for you, maybe you do, just because you're a busy individual, you do maybe need to eat out a little bit more than others, then try and choose those better options. And if you don't know necessarily what those better options are, please just try and ask someone that is well educated, that's a registered dietitian or maybe a master's in nutrition or a PhD, whatever the case is. Don't be afraid to go out there and just ask, what would be a better option? I get that question all the time, when you're out to eat with people. Usually it starts with, oh gosh, I should have ate what you ate, but I'm surprised that you're eating that, right? X, Y, Z, whatever the case is.
I know.
It's okay to enjoy the foods that you like. And when you are indulging in those fast food restaurants, try and just choose wise things.
Yeah.
And I would, just because I already threw it out there, just maybe be cautious of eating the fries and the beef tallow. Or an abundance of them, keep it in moderation. So
I think it's important that I put a little asterisk on this whole conversation.
Okay.
Right.
A lot of asterisks.
I enjoy a good fast food burger and French fries. Right.
Oh, sure.
It's just you try to not do that very often. You try to reduce the number of times you do it. Right. And so it's like one of those things. Like over the years, I've probably backed that off to once every few months, right?
Yeah.
I try not to and it's awesome when you go do it. It's like, hey, it was super fun, awesome, perfect. That'll tide me over for a few months now. I don't have to do that again for a while.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you ever thought about the moments when you do choose that, why you're choosing that? Is it
for me? It's totally. I would say number one, it tastes good.
Yeah.
Right. But I would also say that there's just a little bit of nostalgia to it. Right? It's just like one of those things that, I think about going out for burgers and fries growing up with my family. And so, I think that's kind of part of what gets tied to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
When I find myself in those moments, it's because same thing, either nostalgia or it's like a Sunday afternoon and I just don't want to do anything, or I just had a really long day and it's, approaching 7, 8 p.m. and I just need to get something quick.
Yeah.
Right? And when you think of it in that way, sometimes it makes it a little bit easier, a lot easier to choose the better option. Or at least just understand, okay, these are the moments where I allow myself to do that.
Yeah.
Right? So.
The last thing I'll say on this, because I don't want to keep going on this thing, but last thing I'll say is when you're going out to eat, do remember that while the foods themselves can be a lot of fun, right, and maybe you're going out for something specific, one of the best parts about it is that somebody else is cooking for you. Right? And if you think of it through that lens, all of a sudden, that salmon with Brussels sprouts and, I don't know, with a side of quinoa doesn't sound as way less fun than your burger and fries.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you're like, hey, you know what? Someone's going to make me that. Seriously? And they're going to clean up my dishes? That's awesome. So that's my last thing on that.
All right.
Do we have any other bullet points in here that you're thinking about with the processed foods?
No, I think this one's, in my opinion, I think it's a pretty obvious section. I think it's honestly one of the ways for the people who set these out to really highlight a lot of their goals. And just what at the end of the day, it could have been put into the whole grain section and just, reduce those highly refined carbohydrates. And I would have liked to see, again, if we were able to expand this, maybe some swaps options,
Oh, yeah.
Because it mentions choose or prioritize nutrient dense foods and home prepared meals. What is that type of a thing? Instead of going to the restaurant, for example, and getting this, choose this at home. Or instead of buying this packaged product, maybe lean towards this. Here's an alternative to that. So that way people can really understand, oh, okay, that's how I take that step to choosing nutrient dense, or that's how I take that step to your point, not just removing something, but swapping it out for a better option.
Oh, that's a really good point. And while I was listening to you say it occurred to me, if someone is consistently going to restaurants because they don't either want to cook or have the time to cook or whatever that is, just simply eating at home and planning that out is and maybe it's all frozen meals. That's a big step. And so to go even that step further and say, now I want you to prepare all whole foods where we're making these gourmet meals, like, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so to those people who are listening to this and saying, okay, that's great, you guys, awesome, you clearly love cooking and clearly enjoy doing that and have a little bit of time to do it. I hear you. I really do. Pick one day.
Yeah.
Start just with one day. Like, okay, I'm going to start making a meal at home and I like to use Tuesdays. For whatever reason, Tuesday tends to be, for most people, the best day to do something new, right? On the weekends, you're like, I don't want to do anything. I'm just hanging out. Monday is Monday. Wednesday, you're already thinking about what's coming next. There was things going on Wednesday night. Thursday, you're doing leftovers. Friday, you're just trying to, it's Friday, so you're just like hanging out, right? Tuesday is a great day to try something new. So if you find yourself next Tuesday with a little bit of extra time, try making a meal at home.
There you go.
Yeah.
And to dovetail off of that, if you think that we're just naturally great at cooking and started cooking right away, please revisit our episode 4 with Sydney O'Leary, where we talk about that, because all three of us are at different stages of cooking for sure.
It's true.
So I think that's also a good thing to add. All right, added sugars,
Less.
try and reduce them.
Seriously. I mean, that's a short and sweet. Yeah.
Okay, before we actually put a pin in that, another good way is to look at that. Now the food labels do have the added sugar portion, so if you're buying a packaged product, just look at the added sugar, if it has added sugar, and then it does mention that in this section, or in that previous section, about like words to look for added sugar. So if you want, please look at that, or again, talk to a professional. All right, next section.
Limit alcoholic beverages.
Yeah.
So this one's pretty vague. And I would say of all of them, probably the vaguest. Is that fair?
I would have to go back through and look. I can't make that statement right now. It's
Sweeping
really
generalizations. But yeah, I don't know. Consume less alcohol for better overall health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think when I hear about these dietary guidelines and people refer to the alcohol section, and is it just because of the vagueness that everyone thinks that it's just not as adequate as it should be, at least for health professionals that I follow? Or is there other rhetoric out there that I have not seen? Like,
Not
why?
that I've heard of.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure before we dive into this, because I have my own thoughts. I just know that when I think about or hear about this being talked about, it's just people are, especially from the health side, are kind of a little bit outraged, or not outraged, but not happy with the vagueness thing.
Outrage.
Yeah,
I like it.
there we go.
like it. No. Okay, go ahead. What are your thoughts? Go ahead.
Well, outside of it being vague, I do just wonder why it is not talked more about the harms that alcohol could potentially have on you. You know, if we go back to the previous section we just talked about and talking about added sugars, you know, especially like artificial sweeteners or non-nutritive sweeteners, it mentions that cannot be a part of a healthful diet, the non-nutritive and artificial sweeteners in that previous section.
Yeah.
But I have not come across any literature that shows that. And I'm honestly, on the contrary, when we talk about like weight loss and things of that extent and moderating our caloric intake so that way we aren't, eating in abundance and, putting on weight and that can cause health concerns.
Yeah.
It has a benefit when you consume those versus caloric dense sugars, right?
Yeah, from a behavior standpoint, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
right? So then we come here and we just say consume less alcohol for better overall health.
Yeah.
But yet we don't really necessarily point out like that alcohol is ethanol. Ethanol is alcohol. I don't know how accurate that phrase is. One way it's very accurate. But either way, it is a carcinogen. It's a known carcinogen. Yep. That being said, I consume adult beverages that have alcohol in it here and there, and I definitely do try and limit it and consume less, and it's okay. But I think it's also okay when you're having it, and that's the point I'm getting to here. That's a long-winded way of saying when you're consuming alcohol, don't worry about it being a carcinogen. Worry about if you're doing it in a group setting with people that you're enjoying, and it kind of just helps amplify those moments, right?
And then considering, and enjoying in moderation, of course.
Sure, yeah.
But like you said, I think it's probably the social aspect of it that's probably the biggest part.
But don't you think, like in the previous, I'm going to keep going back to this quick previous section,
Sure.
we could make the same argument.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going out to eat in that social setting and maybe eating that burger and fries because it's out, let's say it's either at a restaurant or out on a patio, whatever the case is, but you're enjoying that, wouldn't that be kind of the same thing? I would argue yes, but yeah, that's kind of the point I'm getting to.
And
there.
I think what's interesting is this section is the one section that assumes you are consuming alcohol.
Yeah,
that is the assumption that's made. Consume less alcohol for better overall health.
Mm-hmm.
That bullet point assumes that I am consuming alcohol.
Yep.
Almost every other section tells me, hey, eat this. You should put this in your body. I'm not assuming what you're having. For the most part, they don't say that. Maybe significantly reduce the consumption of highly processed refined carbohydrates. That bullet point assumes we're having those, right?
Yeah.
But very few of them do that. Alcohol does. Alcohol says, we get it. We know you're drinking alcohol. Have less. I think that, to me, for something, they're kind of like two things. And I think I've told you this before, but there are two things on my it's just not good for you list from a health standpoint, from a physical health standpoint. There's two things on that list, and that's regular soda. It's just sugar, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get that. And then alcohol. It's just not good for you. It's a poison. It is, 100%. To our body, it is. Now, enjoying it in moderation every once in a while, like our body can we're built to filter out some of those toxins, and so we can, right? But to assume that someone is drinking alcohol, like it feels backwards to me.
Sure.
I do appreciate that there's no numbers attached to it, though.
Okay.
I think it's probably the one section that I'm glad there's not a number attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if someone says, like, for a healthy diet, men should consume 2 drinks or less per day, all of a sudden, 2 drinks every single day, 2 alcoholic beverages every single day is now considered healthy. Just like that, because it's in the... And they're like, well, no, it's important, the less. Okay, yeah, but all they see is the number, right? So by not putting numbers here, consuming less alcohol for better overall health, that leaves some room to say, like, I don't need it today, right?
Yeah.
Just one of those things that as I'm sitting here thinking through it, that I actually do appreciate, but still super vague. I think if I were writing these guidelines, I would say no alcohol intake is healthy. Going like any more than 0 is a health risk.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just keep that in mind. Like, to me, we shouldn't make it something that is like, hey, yeah, this is part of a healthy diet. Now, like you mentioned, from a social aspect,
sure,
if those drinks are involved, something like that, that could be possibly even more beneficial than not having it, right? But then it comes down to, do I need it to have fun? You know, all those existential questions, but that's for another podcast, I think.
No, actually, I think that was a really interesting interpretation that you had there. One that I had not, and the first one being that there's not, like, it's just assuming that assumption, to your point. Like, I had not thought about that. That was really interesting. And then the second one that you mentioned was the numbers, because previously people would ask, actually I'd usually ask the question and then give them my answer, but my answer to the question of, what's the number one health statement out there that kind of rubs me the wrong way? Mm-hmm. It was that moderate alcohol consumption is healthy or okay, just because it did have that 2 to 3, depending on whether you're female or male, serving on it. And the serving sizes, I mean, let's be honest, I'm pretty sure it's, if I remember correctly, 4 ounces of wine, and no one drinks 4 ounces of wine. I actually think it's less than that, if I remember correctly. Either way.
I think it's 5.
Is it 5? 4 or 5? So either, but most people are drinking a glass, probably more than that.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
People like big glasses versus America.
Yeah, but like to another one of your interpretations was that those numbers, that's what the layperson's going to like latch onto are numbers and not necessarily the actual data or the actual interpretation of those numbers. And yeah, wonderfully said, man. Even though it was kind of a ramble, that was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So why is sodium on this page?
That
is the next topic. It's kind of like that cooking on that. Okay, so after limit alcohol beverages, we
don't
move on
know.
to sodium, and we already kind of touched on sodium when we were talking about refined carbohydrates. But it just gets thrown in there under alcohol, and there's very, very few alcoholic beverages I'm going to assume that have much sodium in it. So it's just kind of a weird placement.
Yeah, interesting.
So-
We've already kind of gone through that too. So.
Yeah, totally. Sodium electrolytes are essential for hydration. There's pretty easy ways to get sodium and electrolytes in our diet. I do think maybe magnesium, hopefully in the future, could be pointed out. But again, that comes down to, the individual also. So outside of that, we move on to a few other special populations and considerations.
Yeah.
And I think for the sake of these conversations and the topic and our goal here, we don't really need to go too in depth on this, because I also want to say, when we're talking about, and some of the headlines here, like infants and early childhood, specifically from like birth to about 4 years of age, there's middle childhood and adolescence.
Yeah.
I do think you should really, and I urge anyone, if you have concerns about what your children are doing, please do reach out to an expert, especially one that is a pediatric expert, because they're going to have the best knowledge for what will fit your child, and be able to work with the parent really well too. I think that's one of the things that I learned when we're going back to our internships, is that these individuals that specialize in pediatrics, they aren't just great with children, they're also great at getting the education over to the parent, so then that way everyone kind of understands what's going on, but in different ways.
Yeah. And right? I think it's really important to remember that we have all these other conditions that exist, right? All these many disease states that lots of professionals and doctors work with, right?
Lots, yeah.
People have been having kids and working with children and babies for the entire, like every day. There's a full slate on those people's plates, those who work with infants and kids, right?
Yes.
They're practicing it all the time. They're really good at what they do. There's a reason they chose that line of work, is because they enjoy that, right? And so all of these kind of the special that we know this is stuff that's not changing a whole lot, right? So
yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think that's all I have for that.
Absolutely.
Then we get to young adulthood, and same with these young adulthoods, pregnant women, lactating women. Here at Iowa Specialty Hospitals, we have a fantastic Gabrielson clinic that focuses on women's health, so I'm going to shout them out.
Absolutely.
If you need any advice there, we have locations in Boone, Northern Iowa, so we have Clarion, Clear Lake, a few other places, so take a look at them. And then older adults. I do think this is something that I actually kind of have like a small passion about, just older adults and nutrition, I would say. I'm not going to get into too much depth here. It does change a little bit as we age, and what we should be prioritizing, and also what nutrients maybe we should be adding in, and what can we be doing best for our overall health. And caloric intake changes a lot. Like, there's a lot of things that do change as we age, and I don't know if it's talked about enough. So this section is pretty vague. Again, it does mention a few things to prioritize or key nutrients to focus on. But again, in general, maybe as you're getting above that 65, 70 year age, start talking to some experts about what you could be choosing better, or if you're doing things okay. Because more often than not, you probably are doing them okay.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Okay. So I want to highlight there just quickly. There's a section on individuals with chronic disease.
Yeah.
Work with a professional. Work with a dietitian. There's no reason not to, right? Go find them.
Yep.
Talk through your case, your situation, and they'll help you, right? That's what we're there for.
Sure.
We're here to help with those situations. So if you are someone who's struggling with chronic disease, don't wait. Go talk to someone about your food. Your food is so important, and if there's something that you can do to feel better more consistently, let's do it,
Yeah. I think that's all I got.
I do want to mention one last thing here. We're going to, we talked a lot about saturated fat and having your 10% of your daily calories or less coming from saturated fat. So I think that could be helpful to put just a little calculator or just a sample math equation about what that would look like in a 2,000 calorie diet.
Yeah.
So that way people can see that in the description of
Oh,
our.
you want me to put it in there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can
Off
see
the
that.
top of my head, 2,000 calorie diet would be about 22 grams, 22 to 23 grams total of saturated fat. To end this, I round it out a little bit. In general, I shouldn't say my recommendation, but Michael Pollan, who is someone that I think puts this pretty simply, is just that eat real food, not too much, and mostly plants. And then, you can add in, obviously, the proteins that are lower in fat. You can add in any specific nutrient that maybe you might be lower in, depending on whatever situation you're in. But that kind of answers a lot to what I would say. All right. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for an awesome conversation. I think these are fun. Part 2 in the books.
I'm not gonna be the
All right. Dietary Guidelines. See you later.